Okay, now I'm in the coffee room. I think that the connection is better in here though, so that's good. And maybe we can proceed well. I am so sorry. I really thought, because I have Wi-Fi through the church here, I really thought it was going to be fine. So I'm so sorry. So we're talking about periods. We're talking about all the things that can go wrong with your cycle. And late periods are one of those. If your cycle is over 35 days, then we start to wonder. So it really can be normal, anywhere between 21 and 35. But if it's over, hi Holly, hi Megan, I'm so sorry for the delay today and the technical difficulties. So if you are under 45 years old and your periods are longer than 35 days, then we look at stress, illness, undereating, or PCOS. And what I'm going to do is we're going to have a key for this. So you'll have your period report card, and if this is one of the things you check off, then those are the things that you would look into. So it's going to be almost like it's going to give you a plan, because you'll check off the issues you have, and then we can investigate what that could be, and then you'll know which natural interventions to try. So I'm hoping that'll all be really easy to follow. Hi, Holly. And early periods. So late periods, if you are over 45 years old, then you might question, like, is there a thyroid issue? Or that you might be entering this transition into menopause. And I would really encourage all of you to talk to your family and find out, like, when the other women in your family went through menopause. That's really our best indicator, because it's mostly genetic. And I've talked to some women who, everyone in their family went through menopause early, and that would be good information for you to have. But as we were saying, in perimenopause, your cycles actually can often shorten, but as you hit really close to that point where you're changing over and the cycles are ending, then they may be longer. So if your periods come early, if they're less than 21 days, that again can be a perimenopause thing. You have more follicle stimulating hormone when you're older, and I really think that's just the body trying to see, if it can have more babies before you can't have them anymore. So it shortens your cycles, and so that can be okay. The best thing to do there is take that temperature and see if it's that follicular phase that's shorter. That will be a good indicator for that. But another thing that might happen here is low progesterone. So those are things to check. And are you ovulating? We always have to ask that. So hopefully people are getting a head start on figuring that out. So the next one is heavy periods, and I know that is something that's a concern of several people in this group, and there are just a lot of different things that can contribute. So we're going to have to do some troubleshooting. If you do have a copper IUD, that can contribute. Perimenopause, they may be heavier, but still, if they're at the point where you're having lots of clots and the heaviness is quite a bit over that 80 milliliters a day, or 80 milliliters through the whole cycle, then we probably want to ask your doctor what's going on. I know that Jonelle in this group has had some success with herbs, and from now on, from this point out, I say, if you have things that have been successful, tell me, and I'm going to compile a list for all of us so that we have resources to look at. You may not be having heavy periods right now, but you may enter perimenopause and have them, and I think we can be really supportive to each other in having a good resource list for these things. Heavy periods are also low progesterone, yet again. Progesterone helps it to be less intense. So we've got to find out, are you ovulating? And if you are, we may need to support having more progesterone in the body, and we have some good ways to do that we'll start talking about next week. Again, thyroid issues, and then endometriosis or adenomyosis, which are very similar but have to do with this endometrial tissue being not where it's supposed to be. So an endometriosis is outside of the uterus, and an adenomyosis is actually in the muscle tissue. And they're hard to diagnose because you can't diagnose them with an ultrasound. You have to do like a laparoscopic surgery. It often takes like 10 years, Laura Bryden says, for people to get the diagnosis. But she says, stand up for yourself, ask your doctor to check it out because it's a big deal, and there are good things you can do if you know that's what's going on. And that one will come up quite a bit as we walk through this list. So please, if that's a concern of yours, let's talk about it more. Let's figure out how to address it. So also heavy periods can be a result of estrogen excess. And that is something that all of us need to think about and know about, whether or not the heavy periods in particular are what's going on. You may have other symptoms of high estrogen. Estrogen tends to go up and down quite a bit during perimenopause. And so you may notice that happening. Things like breast tenderness, more like emotional PMS symptoms, headaches. So any of those things could be related to estrogen excess, even if you aren't having the heavy periods, but those are related to. So there's two pieces to this. One piece is that your body may be making excess estrogen, which is probably the case in perimenopause. But the other thing that may be happening is that your body is not clearing it well. And that is something that we can help with. So things that affect that are those nutrients that we talked about last time that are really good for the corpus luteum and the follicle. Really similar profile here. Folate, B6, B12, zinc, selenium, magnesium, and you need protein. So, hi Megan. So I'm going to put that list down so you can look at it again, but these are all nutrients you're going to need in order to clear the estrogen well. A lot of people aren't clearing it well because they have some genetic mutations around this. I run into that a lot with my clients, and if you've read about it, it's MTHFR. There's a genetic mutation. You can have one or two of them, and in that case, it makes it hard to detox in general and hard to clear these estrogens. And so in that case, the folates and the B vitamins in a methylated form. So I can explain that more in detail if you guys want me to, but that can be huge to feeling better and getting this estrogen to clear. It's also correlated with histamine response. So if you have any sort of histamine reactions, like an allergic reaction or even like allergies, congestion, you may be having a histamine response that parallels this estrogen issue. And so some of these things also help to clear those histamines out of your system too. And so then you get that double effect of feeling quite a bit better. There are also a lot of things in our environments that cause our bodies to have a hard time clearing things, having a hard time detoxing them, especially estrogen. And we call those endocrine disruptors. And they can be any kind of chemicals, pesticides, solvents, fire retardants, mercury, or like the BPA in plastic. So as much as possible, choose natural things. It really matters. Like we can feel like it's not that big of a deal and the other stuff is cheaper. But putting all this together, those things are actually keeping our body from detoxing well. And when we have excess estrogen in our systems, that is one of the factors that can cause cancer. And so we want to know that we're handling this well, that we're trying not to drink out of plastic bottles, that we're trying to use products in our homes and for like beauty products and all of that that does not have these kind of endocrine disruptors in them. It seems like a small thing, but it's really worth it. You can also have a higher sensitivity to the estrogen in your system, even if you have a normal amount, and that can be due to chronic inflammation or to low iodine, which we are going to talk about extensively in the weeks to come, because low iodine can affect some of these symptoms, and it's worth looking into, but it's a little more complicated. But you can imagine a lot of us who eat really, like try to eat really clean, try to eat all real foods, maybe using sea salt and not getting iodized salt even, or eating seaweed or other high iodine foods. And so it's kind of a wake-up call to realize that can affect us, and that we may need to supplement with it. But I don't want you to start until we've talked through that whole process. If you're very sensitive to alcohol, you might also wonder about a histamine intolerance or high estrogen. Your gut bacteria also affect this. So if you have dysbiosis in the gut, unhealthy bacteria, parasites, that's going to affect your body's ability to get rid of this estrogen well. Yeah, so there's a lot there. If you talk to your doctor, and Laura Bryden has tips about this throughout the book, and I think a section later on that we'll go over, but the internet term is estrogen dominance, and that can mean that estrogen could even be normal, but if it's really high compared to progesterone, then people will call it estrogen dominance and talk about all the things we just talked about. But your doctor is going to prefer the term estrogen excess or high estrogen, and they're like, they may not want to talk to you about it if you use the estrogen dominance term. So just a doctor tip, because I want you to work well with your doctors and natural health professionals. I'm not a doctor, and I'm not trying to give you medical advice as much as help you understand your body and get education on what you can do to feel better and to know what's going on, so then you can tell your doctor in an educated way when you have specific needs. Okay, so the next one is light periods. So really a period can be pretty light and still be normal. So I think it's less than 5 tampons, regular sized tampons over the course of your cycle that would be considered like lighter than normal. So it can be pretty light, and it can also be fine if they're pretty light as long as you're ovulating. So the question is, are you ovulating again? And if you're ovulating and your cycle length's normal and everything's normal, it may not be anything to worry about. It is correlated with smoking, with undereating, and with soy or some of these phytoestrogens, which we didn't really talk about that with the estrogen excess, but soy and some of these endocrine disruptors almost behave like estrogen in our body, which is why it becomes hard to clear them. Okay. Pain. Pain is another thing. It's pretty normal to have some period pain or cramping during your cycle, usually the first couple of days. We're going to learn some good natural support for that. So if the pain persists despite the natural support, then it may actually be something to pay attention to. I have this great information about how to treat the trigger points in your body in order to alleviate period pain. And so I would love to share that with you guys. I was thinking I might try to show you, but I think it's too hard on this Facebook Live. But there's three muscles that can cause the feelings of period pain. In my work, I do some Thai body work and use trigger point therapy. And trigger points are points in your body where if you press on them, they're actually sending their pain somewhere else. And the whole idea of it came from heart attacks, like how people feel them down their left arm. And And it turns out that all the muscles do this. You may be feeling a headache down here at the base of your neck, but that's actually often coming from down at the base of your shoulder blade, right inside of that toward the spine. There's a trigger point, a low trapezius trigger point that refers its pain right up there to the base of the head. So throughout the body, these patterns have been mapped out like really thoroughly. You can actually look them up online and see the patterns mapped out because they tested this on so many different people. And so there are ones that create either that low back or down your leg pain that sometimes comes with cramps, or the more like low abdominal pain. And if you work on those points, my personal experience is that the period cramps go away pretty quickly for me. If they don't go away for you, then it's probably something else that's contributing to it. But I'll share that video with you, and I'd love for you to give it a try and see what you think. More severe pain, endometriosis, adenomyosis again. These diagnoses where some of that endometrial lining is ending up where it's not supposed to be. It can be very painful. So if that's happening for you and nothing is touching it, maybe time to look into that. Other types of pain during sex, especially if you're having like a deep pain during sex, you may want to talk to your doctor on that. You might have an infection, it may be endometriosis, maybe something more serious. If it's discomfort, that could be a number of different other things going on. But if you're having a deep pain that's really terrible, then you probably want to see your doctor about that one. You may have another time when you may have pain is that mid-cycle, middle schmerz time. If that is more intense than just like over the course of an hour, a little bit of pain, then something else may be going on there. And it may be an endometriosis, adenomyosis, because that's more likely to happen across the length of your period or your cycle instead of just during the period. Thanks, Holly. I see that you're mentioning about the normal amounts. Yeah, I think it's really helpful. We were talking about that on Thursday, that even those amounts, like if you're not using a tampon, it's, you kind of have to figure that out. We had heard that that usually on the pads they will have like how much they hold, so that may be another way to kind of try to add that up over like on the box or something. It should be listed and add up how much it is, because yeah, it's tricky. And I think like if you're using a cup or a cup especially, like it can hold way more, but it doesn't look like a lot when it's actually just liquid in the cup as opposed to when it's spread out over a pad. So I can't, like, your whole comment isn't showing up just because of my phone here. Oh, here it goes. Yes. Okay. Wonderful. Yeah. Check it out. I'd love for people to report back what they find out, because that's some of what I've found out doing this is like some things I thought could be, is that a problem? They're actually within normal range. And so getting a real like clear focus on what is actually a problem and what is normal. Hopefully that this week will clarify some of that for people. Ovarian cysts are when you get like large fluid-filled follicles. So that follicular phase, when as the follicles are growing and like one of them wins the race. If you have one that fills like a whole lot with fluid, may burst, usually resolves itself on its own. That can be painful. Maybe you've had that happen. Maybe you've heard of people who were like, I had a cyst, and they ended up going to the hospital because it was so painful. Usually it doesn't need surgery, but it can be really painful still. And this is really different from like PCOS, the polycystic ovarian syndrome. That you would think that must be what it's about because it says cysts. But with that, the follicles are actually smaller than normal, and those are the little cysts that have been identified. So it's two different things. If you have abnormal discharge or fluid, so normal is going to look like white, may have a little, or yellow, may have a little bit of a salty smell. If you have the mucus, it's going to be slippery. clear to white, like the egg whites, that's all normal. Normal to have some of that. Nothing to worry about. If it starts to smell more fishy, especially, then we would suspect like a bacterial vaginosis, and that's something you would want to see your doctor about, or look into some natural protocols. We can talk through that too, but your doctor can tell you if that's what it is, and that can be really helpful. Then you can decide from there whether you want to take an antibiotic or if you want to do some natural things to build up that good microflora of the vagina and the cervix. So if you are smelling that or seeing this different type of discharge, same thing with yeast discharge. If it's white and chunkier or has a strong odor, those are when you want to go find out from your doctor what it is. It can be really hard to identify on your own as part of the issue, and they'll run like some kind of test to find out like which one it is. And so whether or not you decide to go a medical route on dealing with it, going to the doctor and finding out what it is and how serious it is, all that is worth doing. Yeah, I'll say more about that if we have people that have those going on, but I'll leave it there for now. If your fertile mucus is not happening at that fertile time of the month, then we would also suspect something else is going on. So if you're noticing that you have fertile mucus, like right before your period, you have that white, egg white kind of discharge, then we wonder, are you ovulating? Because it looks like your body's trying to ovulate again, but it's not. The timing's over for that. So it's worth kind of noting that as you note the temperature, like is that off too? It also can happen because of low progesterone. So you might have ovulated, but then your progesterone just wasn't strong enough and the fertile mucus comes again. So it's another indicator that something is off. If you're bleeding between periods, that can be normal. You might just have a little bit of blood around ovulation. That can be normal. If you have a little bit of spotting before your period starts, that can be normal too, although it also can be a sign of low progesterone. And if you're having quite a bit of that spotting right before your cycle, then you might wonder about the thyroid again, about fibroids or polyps, which we haven't talked a lot about, and we'll get into more next time, and then endometriosis again. So if that spotting's happening quite a bit, then we wonder what's going on. And if you're having bleeding after sex, that is one. I'm going to post a list of things that you would want to talk to your doctor about, and that's one of those. Where, like, it could just be a little bit of, chafing or something like that, but if it's not, then it could be something more serious. So it's worth asking your doctor about. And then the final set of things are the PMS symptoms, which I'm kind of like clumping together as one item on your period repair or your period report card, because they all kind of go together, and they are a result of high estrogen, low progesterone, and inflammation. And so we're going to, in general, hopefully for all of us, address that. But irritability, headaches, acne, breast tenderness, fluid retention, food cravings, sleep disturbance. Those are the biggies. I'd love for you to comment and tell me which ones you have, or if you have them before your period. Sometimes people are having issues and they don't have any of this, but it's really common for us to have these premenstrual symptoms. And then if you're having post-menstrual symptoms, like you're starting to have symptoms after your cycle's over, then we wonder about PCOS, and we wonder again, are you ovulating? It's like the theme. Are you ovulating? Okay, I'm going to read off this list of ones when you should see your doctor. If you have no periods at all, or if your cycle is shorter than 21 days or longer than 35. If you have figured out that you're not ovulating. If you bleed for more than 7 days or lose more than 80 milliliters of menstrual fluid. If you experience pain between periods or pain so severe you cannot carry out your normal activities. If you notice bad smelling vaginal discharge. And if you observe bleeding after sex or bleeding between periods that is not ovulation spotting or that spotting right before your cycle. So any of those we'd want to investigate a little bit more. She talks about too that you can around day 21 check your estrogen levels to check on that estrogen excess piece, and that's something that if you do that Dutch hormone test that would be included with that. You do it on day 21 of your cycle, and then it's actually a urine test, so you test it throughout the day 4 times and send that in, and then there's tons of information with that hormone panel, but it also tells you if you have estrogen excess, but and if you're detoxifying it well, which is one of my favorite things about that test. It actually can show what pathways estrogen is using to leave the body, and so you can find out what you need to do to support that, because for so many of us, especially with all of the chemicals and things that we're exposed to, so many of us struggle with that, and so I think it's really helpful because you can even do a regular test of estrogen and not realize that that's going on. It may even look normal or in range. And yeah, like we were talking about, you can be extra sensitive to it, or you can just be not clearing it well. Thank you, Holly, for listing yours. I'm hearing a lot of the sleeplessness from clients, like as they enter perimenopause. That's been a big one that's come up lately, and definitely like the emotions. You're saying sadness for no reason. All of this is like really worth looking into, and I want to talk about that more. She doesn't discuss it as much in the group, but I think like doing some journaling, figuring out what's going on below the surface. I found with some of these things that there's often like more of a spiritual, emotional connection. Whether it's something like a trauma issue that's from the past, or like for instance with recurring yeast infections, like there's often a like marital issue. It's almost like your body is saying like I don't want to be with my spouse right now, and so it gives you kind of a buffer or something. So when things happen one time, no big deal. But if something's recurring and chronic and you can't seem to shake it, looking at that mind-body connection and what's going on at an emotional, spiritual level is really important too. Because like she says in the book, once you get the nutrition deficiencies and and some of this other stuff dealt with, if there's stuff that's still lingering, then there's more to it. And hopefully what we'll see is that a lot of things clear up pretty well with some of these dietary and nutrition and supplement changes. So I think that's most of what I wanted to say, although I'm sure I'm forgetting something. Thank you, Megan. Yes, the breast tenderness, pain, tiredness, more emotional. Yeah. And I mean, we talked about that some last week, but knowing that second part of your cycle, like giving yourself a chance to rest more if you need to and be more introspective, that is totally worth it and will sometimes help you not have the pain during the first part of your period. So listen to your body, definitely rest if you need to. If you think that you are losing a lot of iron because of heavy periods, definitely make sure you have that too, because sometimes that tiredness might be related to the low iron. But yeah, and the breast tenderness is a big one. We're going to talk through some options for that next time too. But again, like I said, if you have things that are working for you, please post them. I would love to hear your experiences on what works for you. And we'll get into all these other interventions next week. And I'm going to hang around. I'll post the little checklist for the period report card in here and on the Practice Better. And I'll hang around and answer anybody's questions that come up too. All right. Thanks, everybody.